Hello, everyone. Oh, am I live? Good evening. It's so nice to see everyone here. We've been Zooming for too long. It's real people. We're so excited to be back. My name is Indra Mungal. I work in the education department here at the Asian Art Museum. And first of all, before I say anything, I wanted to say my team has been incredible. I really want to give a shout out. Our AV team has gone above and beyond. We're live streaming tonight. Yes, really incredible. Education department. My solid rock, Allison Wyckoff, has had my back, and it's really extraordinary. You can't hear me. Ooh. Okay, Allison Wyckoff, who just has my back. She's helping me make sure that I can remember how to use a microphone because it's been a while. So anyway, I wanted to, first of all, in terms of housekeeping, we are live streaming the program tonight to YouTube, and the recording will be on YouTube in a few days. And as you can see, we have an ASL interpreter, and we've had a little bit of technical difficulty because we don't have a second interpreter. So Annie, our wonderful interpreter, will be interpreting part of the program, but not the reading from the books. So we're going to really encourage you to go down and purchase the books. If you haven't read them, they are extraordinary, really extraordinary. Can I see how many people have already read the books? Have we? Oh, well, a lot of us have homework to do. it's really they're really incredible. And I also wanted to mention it is Yom Kippur and Mexican Independence Day, and I think those are two really critical, important cultural cultural events I wanted to mention tonight. I'm sorry, I'm not getting the mic down very well, am I? So also wanted to mention that the Asian Art Museum is located on unceded Ramaytush Ohlone territory. And the Asian Art Museum deeply acknowledges the privilege we have to be on this land. We are actually undertaking quite a few efforts to deeply acknowledge the Ramaytush Ohlone. And we've got programming we've done, and we're looking at other physical representation to acknowledge the privilege that we have. So the last thing I wanted to mention, let's see. Oh, I think I've hit every point. So I'm going to introduce our moderator for tonight, a dear friend of the Bay Area who now resides in Hawaii, is Joelle Tan, who is, we love Joelle. Yeah. And we're so happy he flew in just to do this program. So how honored are we? Joelle is a passionate artist, writer, performer, and activist. And many of us know him from his more than 10 years at Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. And he was community engagement director. Currently, Joelle is director of social impact for the One Heart Hub in Hawaii, representing businesses that honor health and wellness of self, community, and world through food, arts, culture, and ecology. And if anyone is having difficulty hearing, we actually have assisted listening devices, which can boost some of us that are not as loud on the microphone, and they're in the back, and they're just, our AV crew can set you up with one of them. So Joelle, you're going to take it away and introduce our authors. Thanks, Joelle.
Magandang gabi. Aloha. How are you? Oh my God, it's so good to be home. I haven't been home since the before times. And this is an incredible moment. And I would say not only just for me, because I was thinking about, can you hear me okay? Okay, I was just thinking about this. I can't believe that people can't actually hear my voice. That is such a new thing. But here it is. And I was thinking while I was en route here, what a time it is, right? Because our worlds are very, very different. And I noticed how folks at the airport were trying to get back into a flow, a swing of things. And then I also noticed that at the BART station in terms of folks, both travelers and the folks working there trying to get back in a flow. And I saw that earlier when we were trying to get tickets here of what it means to open back up in this new time. So I just want to acknowledge, if anything I've learned in Hawaii is the importance of ceremony. And this is a moment, a ceremonious moment where the Asian Art Museum does its first public program with this book prom. I'm calling this the book prom. Yeah, the aging Gen Xers understand the importance of a prom, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So here we are. And so we celebrate that. And through the stories that you'll hear, it is definitely a celebration of the Bay Area and our gorgeous queerdo multiplicity that we take around the world and celebrate. And you will hear it from two of some of the Bay Area's most lovely storytellers and dear friends. So I'll say this, and it made me think about these stories, both very different in the context of this time, and what does it mean to ask these questions and to present these worlds in this epochal shift, right? Like, what does it mean to do that? And what does it mean like, and we'll probably hear from them, to promote a book in this time, or to kind of share those stories in this time. The other thing I wanted to celebrate is, the prom, like, so we got the king and the queen, but the prom, we're all here, and the we of all of here are all of you lovely folks that have, okay, so in addition to who read the book, who here has either eaten with, gossiped with, traded information with, just hung out with any one of us? Raise your hands. Okay, so we're celebrating you, and this is our prom. So that's that. And so so I want to ask you, because I'll come back up here again to do the Q&A, but let's not do a boring old Q&A. Like, we're not in the before times, and we never were. So for those of you who've read the book or know some juicy gossip about Claire and or Jaime, please get up and share that, because that is, I think, the whole enterprise around a book. Right? It's all of that. And so I'm so glad to be here. I've been gushing with this opportunity and been in our little hamlet in Hawaii for the last 2 years, following everyone on the book face. And I'm so happy to be here. So here's the thing we do. We introduce our artists, and I'm going to do that in a couple of ways. So I have some friends here to help me. So I'm going to do the informal and then ask other folks to do the formal. So I'm going to first, I'll just read the bios together, if that's okay, and then we'll just get to the readings. So if we could reformat that, and I'll just say that, I don't even know the first time I met Claire. It's just like I've always known Claire, but I know that since when I first came to the Bay Area, in both my work in public health and in the arts, I've always gone to Claire for clarity. And and to get grounded. And I would say in my early years at YBCA, the amazing work she did with KSW, co-founding Hyphen, doing all of that, I was like, girl, get on my team. What will it take? She knows. I have begged her back when I used to smoke cigarettes back in that back alley, pacing up and down, just promising the moon because I wanted to work with Claire. And she'd always promise. We work together anyway. We're in the same community, and it always rang true. So this is how I know Claire. And then the other thing I would say, the way I know Claire is that we're both Pisces. We take it very seriously. And we have had, when I was here, our birthday twin get-togethers. And this is how I know Claire. So in addition to that, one of the most amazing nerd brains I know that has worlds and worlds and worlds and worlds. And you're just going to experience a sliver of that world with Monkey around. And it's just the beginning. But if somebody else could help me, Deborah, give a little bit more formal. Deborah Cullinan, who is the CEO of Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, who continue to do badassery in the arts.
Just kidding. Uh-oh, I gotta put it back. Hi, thank you for having me, and what an honor to be able to tell you a little bit more about Claire personally. So Claire, thank you for letting me do this too. So Claire Light is a Bay Area writer, cultural worker, and activist. She's worked since 1997 in nonprofit administration, particularly in arts and social justice. Thank you, Claire. She's served as manager, board chair, and director of the amazing Kearney Street Workshop, was a co-founder of Hyphen magazine. You can read her fiction in McSweeney's, Hyphen, and the Encyclopedia Project, among others. And a short collection of her stories, Slightly Behind and to the Left, was published by I can say this, Aqueduct Press in 2009. Thank you for letting me tell you more about Claire.
You know, I live in a town of 500 folks, and this is where this coming back to this community just lights me up. So this is wonderful. And another amazing arts champion, everyone's mentor, Roberto Bedoya, to read Jaime Cortez, the official.
I feel I should make a joke, but Jaime, I won't. But Jaime is a writer and visual artist based in Watsonville, California. His fiction, essays, and drawings have appeared at kindergarten, avant-garde poems, plays, stories, and songs for children. No Straight Lines, 4 decades of queer comics, street art, San Francisco, mission muralism, and Rebecca Salon's experimental atlas, Infinite City, San Francisco. He wrote and illustrated the graphic novel Sex All for AIDS Project LA in 23. I think that's when I met him and he gave me a copy of the book. Jaime often combines humor and tragedy to tell stories of resilient survivors on the margins of the economy, the law, and social accessibility.
So the informal, unapproved one, I've been still wondering what I should share because I feel I've known Jaime for so long, probably as long as I've known, almost as long as about the same time we've all known each other. But I'll say this. So for those of you who know Jaime, does the phrase Shetland Daddy ring a bell? If it does, can you raise your hand? Who knows? Okay, so I share that because, as you can imagine, those kinds of phrases that are peppered throughout Gordo that make you wonder and then makes you kind of just imagine what it is. I have gotten over the decades the late night phone calls that that were the prequels to these stories. So we are still of the generation where we had at some points in our lives hours long conversations. You know, the epic Kiki on the phone, and it was not only is it so heartening to see these stories come alive. And for those of you, did anybody hear the audio of it? Because there's an audio also for JD's, but does anybody hear the audio for Gordo? Please listen to it. It's a whole other experience. This is how rich that world is, but I won't get too much in that. Jaime, I've also known through another plague war, through HIV/AIDS. So we met at that time doing, I think, celebratory, important work when we were youngins to bring arts, because the response to HIV/AIDS movement was an artist movement. And it was us who did that, and we were part of that crew. And here we are again. And yeah, there's so much more to say about Jaime, but I won't. So we can leave it to Claire to begin the read.
Thank you so much, Joelle. That was really, really sweet and awesome. So I am a cyborg. I have machine parts. So if you hear me beeping, Please ignore my insulin pump is in my bra. Okay, and it's already started beeping tonight. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight to social distance together. I'm so thrilled to be here with Joelle and Jaime, who are my parallel twinsies in the community. Thank you, Asian Art Museum, and especially Indra and Allison, for putting this event together for the community and making it a hybrid event and an accessible one. And thank you so much as well for being here. The one good thing this pandemic has brought us is a new paradigm for online arts access, which has made events during the pandemic more accessible to disabled folks. I really hope we can maintain and improve upon this way of doing things and that this becomes the new normal. So I hope you all will take that with you out into the world. My novel, Monkey Around, which I'm going to read from tonight, is an urban fantasy taking place in the Bay Area. And that's all I'm going to set you up with, since I'm going to start at the very beginning. Very good place to start. Let's see. The guard looked entirely human. He wore designer jeans, knockoff Gucci loafers, a sheeny button shirt, and too much hair gel. He smelled, even at a distance, of strong cologne. His skin was a taut medium brown with faint wrinkle lines starting between his groomed eyebrows and around his cheeks. He held a cigarette between his thumb and first two fingers and blew crooked smoke rings. He looked entirely human. That was my first clue he wasn't. I know. If everybody who looked human wasn't, then nobody would be human. But, interesting thought that, but that's not what I mean. There was a brightness to his appearance, like he was in HD while the rest of the world was a cell phone video. He was too perfectly what he appeared to be, an inevitable side effect of wearing a bot glamour. Other people's magic just doesn't sit naturally on you, and only an amateur would take that sparkling, sharp visage at face value. This guy, if Io's info was correct, was a bajang, a shapeshifter that had a human-like form and a weasel-like form. The human-like form, however, wasn't entirely human. He should have had clawed hands and taloned feet, and he was entirely too tall for a bajang, being around my average human height. And bajang apparently don't have higher deceptive magic. Not that he would have gotten away with it if he had. I have my own magic detector when common sense fails, and my eyes were burning away merrily. I was at that moment in the form of a shadow at the base of the air conditioning vent. The guard had come out almost immediately after I got there to have a smoke and gave the place I was shadowing a few hard looks. Probably saw something was wrong with my spot. There wasn't supposed to be a shadow here, but couldn't quite put his finger on it. Halfway through his cigarette, he decided he was done. He gave me a last hard look and flicked his cigarette into me, turning to go back through the door before it landed. The butt flew through me, bounced off the air conditioning vent, and landed just outside my square of darkness. I gave it another minute to see if he was coming back, then transformed from a shadow into a rhesus macaque monkey. Monkey was my default animal form, and the best form from which to do what I was about to do. I pulled a hair from my chest, set it on the bare skin of my elongated palm, and focused on it. The tip of the hair turned into something resembling a microphone, and the shaft began to lengthen. The microphone nosed its way into the vent like a snake, and the hair continued elongating behind it as it slithered down the airway. The root end of the hair shaped itself into an earbud, and I put it into my right ear, even as my left hand continued feeding the shaft of the hair, now a flexible cable, into the vent. And that's me beeping again. It didn't look like any technology you've ever seen. I started out in high school trying to make real machines out of my hairs, but I didn't really understand their mechanisms, so they never worked. But when I got it through my skull that it was magic and not engineering, I just made the things look like what I wanted them to do, and then they started working like, whoa. The microphone head slid past several rooms featuring sounds appropriate to a massage parlor. I'll spare you any elaboration. I pulled out the magic stone and cupped it over my left ear, and the conversations became understandable. I couldn't suddenly speak Chinese, mind you, despite 4 years of college classes, but the gist of the conversation filtered into my brain, even as I listened to words I couldn't understand. Now that's some technology. I was listening for a particular female voice, one that sounded like a warped metal door being scraped open across a rough cement floor, or for snatches of conversation about the owner of that voice, but I got nothing. See, I was on the hunt for Delise, the head of the Bay Area Aswang contingent, who disappeared without a trace 2 days before. It was a fairly serious matter. Leaderless Aswangs would be no joke, especially when their leader was Catholic AF, kept them all living near the cemeteries of Colma, and organized raids on said cemeteries to keep her flock from stealing live babies. This was the third building belonging to the Hung Fo Tong I'd checked tonight, and the only one that was occupied. I retrieved my cell phone. Nothing so far, go for plan B. A minute later, I heard a phone ring through the mic. A brusque male voice answered, and I heard Io's tiny, tinny voice coming through his cell phone. She sounded angry and demanding. The brusque male voice told her, apparently for the second time, that he knew nothing and hung up. Io didn't call back like she would have if this had been a real demand. Then a softer male voice asked the brusque one the obvious question. The brusque voice said, that woman asking about Delise, and the other one grunted. After some desultory talk, they turned to tale-telling that would put X-Tube to the blush. Either they didn't have Delise or they were all talked out about it for the night. Nothing, I texted to Io, talk tomorrow. I turned to go and kicked something by accident. It clattered away across the rooftop, a beer can. It hadn't been there before. I would have known. I was the shadow it was sitting in. I looked for the half-smoked cigarette, didn't find it, and knew that I wouldn't. I should have known. The cigarette hadn't sizzled out when it hit the wet rooftop. The Bajong had thrown a basic enchantment over the beer can to set it up as an alarm. I had just enough time to admire his crude but effective tactic before he, I assume, yanked the rooftop door open and tumbled out. He was shorter by a lot, and his Gucci loafers had been replaced by Talon feet. A look of focused rage now marred his handsome face, and his eyes glowed orange. I could have fled. My rational brain was telling me to flee, but I also have a monkey brain, and monkey loved to fight. And monkey currently had the upper paw. I slid into human form, expecting to gain a moment of surprise. My human form is, I'm too often told, rather young and sweet looking, a pale-skinned girl anywhere between 15 and 25 years, with Asian features and long hair just this side of the blonde-brown divide. About half the folks I'd fought screeched to a complete halt at the sight of her. Me. But this guy was good. He didn't pause, just closed on me with a fury of lightning-fast punches and kicks that left me breathless and delighted. I should have just put him down, but one, I'd never fought a Bajong before. Two, I'd been getting bored with life. And three, this guy was good. He was so fast I couldn't see his hands and feet moving. Wow, okay then, buddy. Okay, let's see what you got. I backed us up along the short length of the roof, opening up a bit to keep up with him. I even let him land a few, just to see how he'd handle it. Ooh, he was pretty. Look at that form. And that speed. Maybe my sweet little face was relaxing in admiration because he took advantage, leaping forward, sinking his claws into my shoulders, and smashing the bony crown of his head into the bridge of my nose, or at least trying to. I turned briefly into a dragon egg, the sudden hardness of my shell thrusting his claws out of my flesh, just in time for him to smash the hard part of his skull against the hard part of my everything. I switched back to monkey, the claw holes behind my shoulders healed. He staggered away from me, pressing his paw to his crown. So they fight, and we find out during their fight that Maya, our heroine, doesn't know what she is creature-wise. She knows what she can do, but she doesn't know what to call herself or where she comes from. And the Bajong suggests that he's seen someone like her before. So she captures him in a bamboo tube to interrogate later. And then I stood at the top of Portsmouth Square Park, balanced on the spine of its pagoda-roofed pavilion, and breathed the city in. At 2 a.m., the park was empty of chess players, gossips, and smokers. The intermittent aroma of restaurant garbage alternated with fishy breaths from the bay 6 blocks away. I was mostly socked in by the giant bodies of financial district skyscrapers, but in between them, I could see the sparkling eyes of more distant windows and the vague black ribbon of the water. or of a void sketched out where the heart of our region ebbed and flowed. Since I'd moved here, whenever I stood in a high place, and being a monkey, that was more often than your average human, I'd look out at the cityscape and feel almost like it was looking back at me, a friend, a witness, almost as if it had its own spirit, as if it could speak, although I believed without question that this was a product of my own imagination. But these days, I thought I knew what that spirit would be saying. I'd spent high school and college under the heavy public apathy of the Bush years and experienced how difficult it was to motivate my cohorts to any kind of action. So that fall, when word of the Occupy Wall Street protests tore through the air like lightning, and Oakland and San Francisco rose up in response, I felt like something was waking up, some better angel of our nature, something militant in the spirit of the Bay. I felt like we were on the threshold of a new era, a new mass movement, one where life would take a huge leap forward. The piece of Late Night Chinatown covered up that excitement. I breathed both in. Then I texted a contact at St. James Infirmary, a local clinic for sex workers, to send their outreach team to this massage parlor. I didn't know if the girls were there by choice, but the St. James team would make sure they got what they needed. Due diligence done, I headed for the wide open sky and massive blocky warehouses of Soma. Jazzed by the weight of Boo-Boo, that's the Bajang, Boo-Boo's bamboo container against my hip, I decided to run off some nervous energy down Folsom Street, past Kearney Street Workshop's new location. No longer on Kearney Street, people. Don't name your art gallery after its location, not in San Francisco. And stick my head in the window to see what their new exhibition looked like. I'd done an internship at the venerable Asian American arts nonprofit while in college, hoping to connect to my non-existent roots. And it became my home away from home. The organization was also the fiscal sponsor for the magazine I helped run, and we often held meetings there. They'd had an event tonight, a stand-up comedy showcase, which I'd wanted to go to, but had to miss for tonight's emergency search. I knew everyone would have got home long before, but it still felt like checking in. I'm a monkey, I'm social like that. I passed a homeless person sleeping in a strange little patio area before a storefront next door. But when I reached the gallery itself, a curtain was drawn and I couldn't really see inside. While I stuck my nose to the dirty glass and tried to see through a crack in the curtain, my monkey brain noticed something else. The smell of homeless, unwashed body, which tended to hit me a little harder than humans, had come wafting to me from next door, but it smelled off. More of my attention followed the smell back from the curtained gallery window to the strange little enclosed patio next door. The smell wasn't, in fact, of unwashed body at all. No, I'd smelled it a time or two before. It was of decomposing body. The body was dead. Now it had my complete attention. That's why I smelled it at all. My nose isn't that good. I walked back a few yards to where I could see clearly, and I could now see that it was all wrong. The body wasn't huddled up, but rather splayed uncomfortably, half on his back, half on his side, his arms and legs thrown out in awkward positions. I thought he was covered by a blanket, but it turned out he had a sports jacket all rucked up over his head, like he'd been clutching it around his face. His clothes were new, there was no cardboard lining the ground, and no bags of belongings or bedding. Jesus, was this a body dump? I couldn't see any blood or signs of a struggle, so presumably the person hadn't been killed here. What a strange place to dump a body. Folsom is fairly busy during the day, and I glanced up. This storefront belonged to a catering company that did its own baking. There'd be someone here in a couple of hours. That was enough to send me to my cell phone, but another useful habit stopped me from dialing 911 right away. Maya, my rational brain said, get your story straight. Although I hadn't done anything wrong, I could see right away that I smelled the dead on him, officer. Wasn't gonna fly. I needed to check his pulse properly and leave evidence that I had. I crouched and pulled the jacket away from his head and upper body, revealing what must have previously been a human face with pale olive skin, but was now sprouting light-colored fur around his temples and cheeks, with his mouth distorted by elongated teeth and a snarl, his fingernails halfway grown into claws, and the barrel of his chest bowing, strange and angular. His corner-folded eyes stared amber. I was immediately glad that I hadn't called the cops. This guy wasn't human. He was a shapeshifter. A were-tiger, to be exact, Io said 20 minutes later when she arrived. I didn't see any stripes, although the poor dude was stuck forever or until he rotted in the moment of transformation. How do you know it's a were-tiger? I've met this guy before, she said. His name is Wayland. He's a Haramau Jadian from Singapore. He runs an import-export company that, among other things, supplies a lot of the Chinese tchotchke stores on Granite. Very successful. Wayland So? I shrieked. My gut suddenly felt like lead. Yes, Io looked at me puzzled. Do you know him? Shit, was all I could say for a moment. I'd only met him once and I couldn't have recognized him anyway with his face all distorted. Io, we were courting him for sponsorships. We was shorthand for the Asian American nonprofits I was involved with, the magazine, Inscrutable, as well as Kearney Street Workshop. There was a lot of crossover in the personnel between the two orgs. Asian American can get kind of incestuous that way, especially in San Francisco. One of the magazine's staff members, who was also a KSW board member, and I had met Wayland last week, and he had been impressed with our youthful joie de vivre or something and wanted to see what kind of stuff we did. Shit, he'd probably even been here for comedy night. Both our orgs were laboring under the funding crunch that had resulted from the economic crash of 2008. Both orgs were direly in need of new funding streams, and local sponsorship seemed the best way to go. Wayland had been our first solid sponsorship prospect in a long time. Are you calling his family? She shook her head. The Asian cats have a sort of benevolent society they all pay into. He heads it up and uses that position to influence the Chinatown machine. They'll want to investigate this death and handle his remains. Inside my head, Monkey insisted that I was perfectly capable of investigating this myself, but my rational brain answered faintly that this wasn't my problem. I didn't even know he was a supernat, I said out loud, as if knowing would have changed anything. We met at a mixer at the Asian Art Museum. There were performances and artists everywhere. That would have neutralized my ability to see deceit. But even if I'd seen it, I wouldn't have done anything differently tonight. Of course I wouldn't have. So why did I feel responsible? And that's how Maya gets involved in a murder investigation. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. You know, looking out at the top half of so many beloved faces, I am feeling so blessed to be here. It's wonderful to be at a live kind of community event again, and it's so good to see the top half of your faces. They're lovely. I'm Jaime Cortez, and I'm going to be reading to you from my book, Gordo, which is a collection of semi-autobiographical short stories. Before I do that, I just want to do a few moments of thanks. I want to thank Indra and the amazing team at the Asian Art Museum. They've taken such good care of us. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for all the incredible organizing work, the accessibility work that you did on this. Fantastic. I appreciate it so much. Thank you, Asian Art Museum. I want to thank as well, at the end of the front row, my friend Rebecca Solnit, who was the tireless champion of this book. It really would not have happened if she had not advocated for it and put it in front of people who could make decisions about publishing or not. So I'm endlessly grateful to my dear friend. Thank you, Rebecca. You know, through it, I also got to work with a wonderful editor, John Freeman, who was just so helpful in helping me to just shape this into what it eventually became, and figuring out how to build more connective tissue between the stories so they kind of hung together a little better. So John Freeman, if you're watching this online, thank you as well. So I want to provide a bit of context as well I'm going to read to you from a story called Cookie. And these stories all take, the first few stories in the book take place in the 70s in a migrant farm worker camp in San Juan Bautista, which, as you might know, is about 40 miles south of San Jose in San Benito County. The camp is home to a whole little mob of kids. You know, I always conceive of kids as humans in training because they're kind of very hot wired into the basest of human emotions and responses, but also the most exalted and beautiful of human responses. So it's the first few stories in particular really focus on the kind of the hierarchy of kids and their how funny they are and how horrible they can be to each other. And in this one, a character, Gordo, who is a chubby, very precociously observant sissy boy, not related to me at all. He is having an encounter with one of the farm worker badasses, Fat Cookie. And this is their exchange that happens in this excerpt from the story Cookie. So that's a little context. And it's kind of a little bit, this space is so beautiful. It's a little echoey as well. So I'm going to read a little slower than I normally do. So bear with me. Cookie. Fat Cookie takes a tiny yellow library pencil out of her pants pocket. She looks from one side of the camp to the other like a spy. She stares at the white wall in front of her like it's something interesting, a television show, or one of those flea market posters with the most beautiful unicorn with a gigantic tail running in the wind. With her back of her hand, Fat Cookie wipes a dusty spider web off the wall and then holds the tip of her pencil against the wall. What are you gonna do? I ask her. She breathes. I'm thinking. Are you gonna write on the wall? I ask. Because if you do, you're gonna get in trouble with, shut up, idiot, she says to me. Not quite mean, just tired, like a mom. Gordo, what do you even know about trouble, she says. You don't have enough imagination to get into trouble. You're too busy kissing ass and reading your books. Fat Cookie, all of the buildings in this camp belong to Gyrick Farms, even the outhouses. Besides, people live in this building, dummy. Tia, Don Ramon, heck, I'll bet it's against the law to write on the wall. You can't just grab your pencil and draw. Maybe you can't, but I can, and I will. And don't call me Fat Cookie, because you're a fatty too. Cookie puts her big moon face right up to mine. I can smell her. You always smell like peanut butter, I tell her. Is that all you ever eat at your house? No, sometimes we get the big block of cheese or the giant cans of tuna or the chicken meat. What do you care anyways? You jealous? No, Cookie, your mom can't even cook good, I say. I saw her throw some meat in Wonder Bread and call it a taco. Meanwhile, my mom makes good food all the time. Fresh tortillas, pancakes, carne asada, pozole, chicken soup, delicious. Is that all you ever think of, Gordo? Food? No. Well, it looks like it. I'm trying to start my drawing now, so shut up or I'll split your lip. Go ahead and try, Cookie. You split my lip and you're what, Gordo? You split my lip and I'll kick you, I say. Probably in the pussy. Cookie wrinkles up her nose like she smells something bad. In case you don't know, bozo, it doesn't really hurt that much if you kick a girl down there. All it'll do is make me mad, and then I'll have to kick you in the coconuts if you got any. See if that finally shuts you up. You think you're so big, I say. That's because I am. I'm 5 years older than you. I'm taller than you. and all the little punks on this ranch. In a year or two, I'm gonna start driving and get the hell out of here. For now, though, I have to live here, and to be honest, I think I'm the queen of Gyrick Farms worker camp. I'm a Chicana, not a beaner like you. What's that? Being a beaner means you don't have papers to be in the USA. It means you're a mojado, just another wetback. No, sir, I'm not no wetback. I was born over in Hollister at Linda Hawkins Hospital. We've lived here in San Juan Bautista since I was a baby. What about your mom and dad, though? They have their papers, I say. They work in the field, says Cookie. They don't speak English. They live in this shitty camp with you. You think they have papers? No way, Jose. Well, you and your mom live here in the camp and you have your papers. We're Chicanas. We're real Americans, not beaners. We belong here forever. Nobody can take us away to Mexico. We can speak English and we can write it too. We're not gonna be in this shitty camp forever. My mom says we're leaving as soon as things get better, maybe to Hollister or Watsonville to live by the beach. We're going back to a real house with a yard, a flush toilet, telephone, and no beaners. I'm not a wetback and you ain't no queen. And what are you gonna draw? Shh, she says. I'm an artist, Mongoloid. I need quiet to do my work, so shut it. Fat Cookie stares at the wall, moves her head from one side to the other. Then she takes her pencil and draws a big, perfect circle on the wall. Then she draws these little curved lines coming out of the circle, and they're the same size, same curve, same distance apart. It's almost like they were made by a drawing machine. Are you drawing the sun? I ask. She doesn't even look at me. She stares at the wall with her eyebrows all bunched up. Cookie looks like she's gonna call out the wall to a fight. Meet it after school behind the baseball field, show it who runs the show. She draws some more, and then I can see it. A pretty flower is growing right on the wall. Then she draws another flower that's hiding behind the first one. She draws two more big ones and lots of tiny flowers, all in a bunch like grapes. Then Cookie begins drawing little marks inside of the petals. Stop drawing right now, Cookie, I say. They're super good now, and if you do anything more, you're gonna ruin them. I'm not gonna ruin them, she says. This is what they call shading, tonto. You do shading to make them look more better, more prettier. Besides, they're my flowers. I can ruin them if I want. She draws a little more, and it's true. She made the flowers more prettier than ever. Cookie draws teeny teardrops on the petals. They look so real. I can hardly believe it. She sketches curvy stems with little thorns. I want to tell her that only roses have thorns. Well, roses, nopales, and other cactuses, but I don't want to get her mad again, so I shut up. She draws jaggedy leaves on the stems and shades them in so they look like they're open in the middle like a book with veins. Wow, this drawing is so boss. I always thought Fat Cookie only knew how to be mean, but she's not only mean, she's an artist. Cookie outlines a ribbon under the flowers, but it's not some boring ribbon. It's all curved towards you in the front, and then it gets all twisted and shading in the back. This is the best thing ever. It's been a while and my feet are starting to get tired, and I think maybe I should go home, but I can't stop watching. Cookie says, almost there. She writes, Chicano power across the ribbon in Cholo letters that look like Chino letters at the Golden Dragon, but they're not. Cookie stops and steps back and stares at the drawing with me. Everything is floating, the flowers, the ribbon, floating in the air like the Virgen of Guadalupe. Wow, Cookie, I didn't know you were an artist. I just like to draw. You're an artist. You think so? Thanks, Gordo. That's a nice thing to say. Yeah, man. Do your mom and dad know you can do this? My mom hates my drawing, says Cookie. She says I'm becoming a chola, asks me why I can't draw nice things, the virgin, ponies, and shit like that. Fuck her. That's not cool, Cookie, what you said about your mom. Fuck her, she says again, this time in a louder voice. She brought you into the world, pendeja, I say. She made you in her stomach and pushed you out of her vaginas. That's a fact. She gave you life, the greatest gift in the solar system. So what, says Cookie? Solar system. You're the only idiot I know who talks about the solar system. You're so fucking weird, Gordo. And what about your dad, Cookie? Does he know you draw like this? Cookie turns her head so fast her braid whips around as if someone had slapped her. Fuck my dad too, wherever he is, says Cookie. Also, Manny's not my real dad, idiot. He's only 22. He's not even a stepdad. Manny's just another creepy boyfriend my mom found. I think Manny's nice, I say. He gave me a ride in his Camaro, and that car is so fast. We drove all around the tomato fields, then to Lejano Market, and over to San Juan Bautista, going 90 miles all the way. One day, I want to have a haircut and a mustache like his. If you like him so much, maybe you should marry him, Gordo. All I'm saying is he's nice. Sometimes he's nice. Sometimes he says nice things to me, buys me nice things. But to tell the truth, that Camaro's the only really nice thing about him. He's a creep with sweaty hands. I need to finish this drawing. Cookie draws one more leaf and steps back from her art. I think it's done now. What do you think? I think it's really good art, Cookie. Thanks, Gordo. She puts away her pencil and starts to walk away. You coming? She asks. No, I tell her. You're too mean today. I'm not too mean. You're too soft. Nah, to tell the truth, Cookie, you're always mean. Okay, soft serve. Don't hang out with me if you don't want to. I'll catch you on the flip side. Later, fat Cookie. Fuck you, booby man. Fuck you to infinity, I say. Fuck you more. Damn, you're stupid, Cookie. You can't fuck more than infinity. Infinity is the end of the road. Maybe if you read some more books, you'd know that. She walks away, holding both of her middle fingers up in the air. Hey, fat Cookie, I say. Cookie turns around, still giving me the double birdies. In case you don't know, you're a crappy artist. Cookie opens her mouth like she's gonna say something mean, but instead she throws her pencil at me and walks away. I pick up the pencil. Dang, I wish I hadn't called her a crappy artist, but she's so mean. Now I can't tell her I'm sorry because if I say that, she'd win. I look at Cookie's flowers. Half an hour ago, there was nothing on the wall, only paint and dusty spider webs. Now, flowers. I think art is kind of weird. Those flowers came from somewhere, right? They weren't in the wall. They weren't in the pencil. They were in her all along. I picture Cookie stuffed with flowers from her toes to her throat like a piñata. All those flowers in her waiting to get out.
Is this Mike? Oh, hi. Hi. Hey, let's give him another round. For those of you who come in later, thank you. My name is Joel Tan, and you are here for Claire Light and Jaime Cortez's reading. And this is the part where we get to celebrate them together now. And before I do, I also want to definitely make sure that Indra and Allison and this entire team know how much we appreciate this moment. And for those of us who have done this work, we understand what it's like to set something up in this time. I can't even imagine what kinds of meetings you guys have been having to get this together. So thank you. And also just want to, and you know, and since the readings, there's been so many more amazing artists, art stakeholders who have walked in the room. And it just reminds me that it really does take all of us to have these projects. I mean, I'm seeing, you know, it really took Jennifer Wofford, who I was having a conversation one night with Jaime Cortez about this book. And then I get a call in Hawaii from Jaime about, hey, wouldn't that be fun if we did this book reading together? Jennifer thought it would be the best idea. And it really struck me at that moment. And I'm just saying that again, was there's so many things to celebrate about this book, but just that part about our gang, our community, our milieu is really here. Each one of you, I am sure, has had some part in making this book come along. And so with that, I want to just turn to, yeah, a third mic. I think it's on there. Oh, where? Oh, can you hear me? Yeah. So I know that for each of you, these books have had their own timeline to develop and to come into being, but they both have come into being now. So I guess that's the first thing I'd love for you to address. Like, what does that mean for you? You know, tell us a little bit about the kind of the concept, how this book was conceived, and what is it like to be in the world in this time?
Well, I guess I'll start. One thing, when I told my parents that my book was being published, they were like, "When can we? Where can we buy it?" And I realized, you know, for people who aren't involved in publishing in the book industry, they don't realize the sheer lengths of time that are involved. You know, it took me 5 years from conception to finishing the manuscript. It took me 2 years from finishing the manuscript to getting a publishing deal. And then the publishing deal came a year and a half before the book was actually released. So so I've been waiting for this publication for a year and a half, and you know, you're just kind of standing back expecting it's going to be like X, Y, Z, like all the things you've seen and all the things you've organized before, all of the public readings, all of the signings in bookstores, all of that. And then the pandemic comes in, and it's like, you know, it's like the bell jar descends around your book publication, and all of a sudden your book publication is happening inside a jar, and everyone, your audience and everyone else is outside of the jar, and or fishbowl, however you want to, whatever metaphor you want to slap onto it, and suddenly you're isolated with your book, with what you want to tell the world, and you know, inside. And everyone else is outside, and you can't quite reach them. So it's been weird and frustrating, but in a way, the pandemic has also given us captive audiences, because people are stuck at home with so many hours to fill, where they can't go outside, they can't do anything, and there's been a real spike in book buying and reading during the pandemic, which has been great in a lot of ways for writers. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I don't know, Jaime, how have you been perceiving this?
I think it's often very tempting for artists to feel like their work is right on time, and I think that there's something very seductive about the idea that, you know, when you put your work out in the world, it's exactly what it was supposed to happen, right? So I kind of resist that thinking for myself, but I do think that there, you know, Joelle talked about milieu, and you know, Claire was talking about the moment, and I think it is really interesting to kind of unpack the meaning of a book or any kind of work of art at a particular moment. I think there is a way that in the past couple of years, we've certainly seen the uplifting of a lot of voices that had previously had much more limited platforms from which to speak out. And I think that in this sense, I think both of these books do have a bit of that moment to them of kind of having a platform for these voices. It's been very interesting. Like, I keep seeing a kind of a trope where people talk about, when you're writing about these migrant farm worker camps, that you're talking about invisible people, or people who are invisible. And I always wonder, well, invisible to whom? Because if you live anywhere in agricultural California, you are driving past these very workers every day, hundreds, maybe thousands of them, depending how much into farmland you're going. And so when we speak of invisibility, what are we really saying there? That it's these people who literally work out in the open, in public, but somehow they're seen as invisible. So that's kind of intriguing for me.
Yeah, just to jump off of that, one of the fundamental purposes, if there's a purpose to a book, of writing this book, was to make my own community more visible, not just the Asian American community in general, but also the specific Asian American community here in the Bay Area that's engaged with cultural work and social justice activism, and it just the timing of it coming out at a time when anti-Asian hate has been spiking. Also, just like Jaime said, it's very tempting to say, oh, this is the perfect time. But I started this, almost 10 years ago now, 8 years ago now. So apparently this is always important. And the invisibility factor is really interesting, because this is the community that blocks out the world for me. That surrounds my vision. This is what I see every day through the screen of my computer, as well as in front of me when I walk out into the world to work. But making it visible to other people is a real process.
I'm just wondering, wow, it really, you have to see the view from up here in terms of who's really in the audience. So I'm just wondering, for those of you who know these stories or read this book, does anybody have a thought about what this means to have these books come out in this time? Is anybody feeling anything about that? Who might want to share? Yeah.
Environments. Sorry, I just wanted to say how remarkable it is for me that it does feel like a present that both of your books are out at the same time, and that it's this wonderful thing where, for two people that have been in so many different points of juxtaposition and so many different points of different types of community and artistic movement building, that you both have this public moment of celebration and realization, and that we get to all be here and witness it with you is really phenomenal. So I love you both, and I'm really proud of you. And one day we will get Manatee on the Scrabble board.
Oh, good. Another Scrabbler. The thing about these stories, I live in rural Hawaii, and it's so much like having my friends with me, whether I'm reading Claire's book and just hearing her voice. So, but a lot of us get that, right? Because we're in that community. But then I also, it brings up it brought up questions for me. I recently just got an Oculus Quest, a VR headset, and I felt like I really understood JD Jang's world as soon as I turned that thing on. And I thought, wow, what an incredible thing that we're moving into this time. And Claire is definitely writing into kind of a woman-centered genre work. And what does that mean in this time? And as storytelling continues to evolve. And then with Jaime, the kind of you know, I was listening to the Audible, right? Because I have these like epic long drives that I have to make living in a rural place. So it's the music and the storytelling of Gordo and the ways that, you know, in order to not focus on the fuckery of this current moment, you know, that moment in the 70s and that immigrant experience that wasn't mine, but, you know, my folks were probably in the next camp over, right? But it really was the thing I needed to be able to dip into other worlds. So in some ways, I hope for those of you who have just started or who haven't yet, I think you're in for a treat in terms of where you could go with these kinds of things. And with that, you know, one of the things I felt like I haven't really had a chance to ask either one of you in our calls is, like, take us through some key moments of what got to the book. Talk to us through the kind of, and as broad and as narrow as you want, because I know that the development and the concept, how this book was conceived, is also its own beautiful story.
I never set out to write a book or a collection. I just wanted to storytell story by story, and these stories have accumulated over many years. Some of them were written as far back as the 90s, I think it took somebody else's eyes on these manuscripts to start naming it as a collection, to start naming it as a coherent grouping of stories. And so it was that. And I would say one of the pivotal things was in the mid 90s, I began to volunteer at an HIV prevention agency called Proyecto Contra SIDA por Vida, which was over at 16th and Mission. And there I found my people at last. It was this polymorphously perverse agglomeration of every kind of, you know, queerness I could imagine at the time. And we were doing this prevention work, and we were doing cultural work as well. And I finally found the people for whom I wanted to create art. I wanted to make stories to share with them in particular. That was my first beloved audience, really. Like I knew what the destination was. I knew whose hands I wanted this work to be in. And I think that was a very pivotal moment when you find an audience that is beloved to you and that you want to speak to and speak about. So I think that was important.
It's interesting that you say that. Monkey Around is kind of almost the opposite. What I'd written before was mostly short stories as well, and written very differently. They're sort of more literary, speculative fiction, short stories, and they were written primarily to my community. And Monkey Around was more of a turning outward, writing to the rest of the world about my community. And it's written very differently from how I learned how to write. I learned how to write through a process that a lot of writers call pantsing, which is you write by the seat of your pants. You don't plan anything out. You sort of connect your subconscious with your conscious mind and let it all flow. And it's very energy intensive. And about 10 years ago, I got sick with a chronic illness that just destroys my energy. And I wasn't able to write that way anymore. And I was stymied for about 3 years. And then I thought, okay, well, you know, I've heard about this writing from outline thing. Why don't I try it? And I tried it, and that's how Monkey Around came about. But it felt very different. It felt very structured. It felt very genre, like appropriate, and it also felt very much like it was accessible to people outside of my community in a way that my work had never been before. So I decided to turn that. I decided to choose a genre, stick to that, to those genre tropes, and use that as a way to talk about my community to people who have never seen my community reflected in this kind of work before. And that's also why I chose a pseudonym for it, because I wanted to kind of mark two different ways of writing and two different ways of approaching work.
You know, this part of the fun of these book releases is just being able to talk with each one of you about any and all of these things. But I thought it might be fun to have like a public exchange of, can you guys reflect on each other's projects, right? You guys, and also you guys have been friends, you guys have been playing Scrabble for a long time. So.
If the manuscript of Monkey Around had been dropped anonymously and without a name at my doorstep, within 10 pages, I probably would have assumed it was Claire's work. Like the book is so absolutely suffused with Claire-ness. And this is, this is of course not an unusual thing, that authors will often pour themselves into a book so thoroughly that it smells like them even. So I think that the book just felt like it was so much about you and your concerns and your themes. One of the things that was interesting, Joelle talked about virtual reality, and I certainly, I experienced your book very cinematically. Like I felt like your book was already a movie. So, because I could see it. So that was something that was really interesting for me. And I don't know if I had seen you in that mode before, not quite like that. So that kind of really jumped out at me as well. And there was an interesting thing as well that happens in the book about how place can speak directly and indirectly to a person, sometimes mystically. And I was very moved by that part of the story, that the Bay Area could talk to people in a sense. So I thought that was a great conceit.
It's interesting. There is no way that Jaime's manuscript could have been hidden from me in any way, because this, like he said, this has been written, I think, over the course of 25 years. It's the stories were being written one by one and being performed, literally performed in public one by one. And I think I've heard most of them, well, about 75% of them before Jaime's read them over the years in public, and I've heard all of them. I think I've only read one of your stories in actual printed form once before. All of your other stories I heard you performing, and that's how I first experienced them. So reading them together in a book, in a book that's already been published, by the way, it was, well, I did get an advanced reader's copy, but reading it in a published book format all together and in basically in chronological order, I experienced it completely differently when I heard Jaime's voice in my head. I remembered the way that these were performed a lot, over the years. And I remember, Jaime's child voice is not something that you forget once you've heard it in a couple of stories. It's very distinct, but experiencing it all together, it was very much like, and I've said this before, it was very much like reading a portrait of the artist as a young man. The project of showing the growing mind of this one character by using the child's voice at each stage of development is really there. But it's also, for me, knowing Jaime as both an artist and a full-grown artist and a community worker, it's also a portrait of the artist and community worker in development in childhood, and so that was how I experienced it. It was kind of mind-blowing to get this like complete, sort of almost 360 view of this work all at once. And I would be really interested to hear how you all experienced this book when you read it, because my experience of it obviously is so different from what a lot of people's would have.
And speaking of you all, wow, you all is Jason Bayani, Philip Wong, Mark Smolovitz, incredible art, Rebecca Solnit, Rebecca Rodriguez. Such incredible showing of, is that Marsha? Oh my God, right? You're all the top halves. Prabha, is that you? Oh my God. All right, so what do you guys think? I know you got opinions. Don't be acting brand new. Oh, now you in, I know it's a fancy house, but don't be acting brand new, you guys. Okay,
They have to go buy the
Jennifer
book.
Wofford.
Hi, you guys. I don't think I could love you more, but then I read your books and then I did love you more. And I think that both books in very different ways brought me to tears at multiple moments. I think that the way, Claire, in which you just created such a love letter to the Bay Area and to so many of our communities was just extraordinary. And that you just did it in this really dazzling way, filled with just so much imagination. And that's like the way the world lives in my head anyway. I just didn't have it articulated quite that way yet. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. And Jaime, I finished your book yesterday and was just in a puddle of just enjoying, like, kind of snorting and laughing and then weeping at the same time. And I think just the kind of humanity that's so we need to hear more of in literature is just so beautiful. And I'm just so grateful to both of you for that.
Thank you.
I laughed and cried a lot too. So I just want to say, please read this book, both of them. I haven't finished Claire's yet, but they're extraordinary.
Perhaps some of us haven't read the books yet, but that counts me in. I'm really excited to see you both on the stage tonight. All three of you, actually. It's quite a treat. I met Jaime and then Claire within a week of each other at Galeria de la Raza. So I'm deliriously thrilled to see that you're both sticking to the craft and continue writing through all the hardships and ups and downs. I just think that's quite an accomplishment. I read your blog, Claire. So I know some about J.D. Jang and about the book, and thought I really wanted to read them together because I've met you both together and I've seen you a lot in different spaces together, and I feel like you talk to each other in really interesting ways. And I can't wait to read both books. I've read other books of yours, Claire, and I've seen Jaime perform many stories, and can't wait to see it on the page. And the kinds of conversations that have happened between the two of you and the communities, it's super fascinating, and just really looking forward to this, but also just so thrilled that through all the ups and downs, you're writing, you're doing your craft, and you're just getting it out there. Thank you so much.
So I want to make sure, I want to go to a super fan, and sometimes we forget that the programmers are sometimes the biggest super fans. And I know that Indra and I have been geeking out about these books, and I know that you have some, Indra or Allison, in terms of any insights you have or any questions you might want to throw out.
Oh, I just didn't get to say in my introduction, anyone who really knows me knows I'm one of Jaime's biggest fans in the world. I adore him. So when I heard about the book and I pre-ordered it, I was like, gosh, I really want to do a program at the museum. And it was so fortuitous that Claire had her book coming out at the same time. And when I brought it to Allison, I was like, I really want to do this. And she's like, let's go for it. So it's just, it's an honor. It's really an honor. And I reading that book, I loved getting really deep insight into your past, which I didn't know. I hadn't heard all the stories. So I just wanted to say I'm loving tonight being the first program back.
Thank you. That's so lovely. And you've taken such good care of us, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
So it's not the first time Jaime's found himself in Asian American literature, right? So I think it's part of our shared history together. On some level, it's like, are we really still in that time where we're still doing the food? Yes, the food groups matter, and do the food groups matter at this point? What is that like for you in terms of you've done a lot? You guys have both done a lot of world jumping. What is that like for you? And what does that mean for you in terms of this current project?
I think that one of the things that's been interesting for me was, the world of the migrant farm worker camp that I describe in the stories. It's basically like an island. It's a Mexican island surrounded by California, and I think it was very interesting to just focus in so strongly on just those communities. It's almost entirely brown people, the characters, Mexicans and Chicanos, documented and undocumented. That's 95% of who is in these stories. And it was interesting to just hunker down and try to just go deep in that, to talk about how we love each other, how we destroy each other, how we prop each other up. And so that was interesting for me to just really go in that way. And I think that the response to the book has been kind of surprising and revelatory to me, just that I thought it would really, I was hoping it would connect well with kind of Latina readers, but it's actually gotten much bigger than that. And I'm taken aback somewhat. I didn't think that there would be this kind of level of interest from so many different kinds of readers. And it's been fascinating to me. And also just a little bit raw, because you do a book like this and you expose yourself, and there's an element of vulnerability that's very real. And as much as you want, the book to succeed, people to be interested, suddenly there's strangers emailing me, and they're emailing with this intimacy, like they already know me because they read the book, and to a certain extent they're right, but it's strange and discomforting in some ways, even though it's flattering. So just some initial thoughts.
Sorry, what was the question?
If there's anything you wanted to comment in terms of what you want your book to do in the world right now, and the kind of the multiplicity of communities you belong to.
I think I pretty much already said it. I want to represent my community to the world. I want people to see Asian Americans as more than young women in conflict with their immigrant mothers, which is the popular genre of Asian American fiction out in the and autofiction and autobiography and memoir out there today. Not that I'm crapping on that. There's a place for that, and there's a reason for that. But there are times when I feel like that's the only slot we're allowed to slide into, and I would really like to see people buying and reading more Asian American fiction that does not deal with generational immigrant family conflict. So there's that. I want to normalize being Asian. I want to normalize being progressive. I want to normalize being an activist in the world, because we're not wild-eyed Molotov cocktail throwing, stereotypes of Antifa that the right throws around. We are normal people who eat breakfast and play Scrabble, and we actually very often get paid for our activism because it's a job, and I want to normalize that, and I want to let the world know that this is a sector of society as well, a sector of our economy as well. And I want people to have fun when they're reading my book. That's why I chose a really kind of funny, obnoxious genre, because I want you to go in there and have as much fun as you would have at a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, with superheroes and fight scenes and murder mysteries and all of that stuff. So yeah.
Great. Thank you. I think we're at about time, and I'm just wondering if we could just get really quickly, what are the next things for the book? Like, what are some of the, are you guys going on, taking it on the road, doing more readings? I know that, when's your audio coming out? Maybe talk a little bit about some of the next.
My audiobook is coming out September 23rd.
Great. And the audiobook for Gordo came out at the same time as the paper version of the book came out. And yeah, there's many readings that are going to happen between now and the end of the year. And I have a website, jaimecortez.org, and I'll be posting some of those there. And I'm working hard to become a full-fledged promosexual and constantly hustling my book. So this is me coming out to all of you in this way.
Would you repeat the question?
Okay. So Erica asked, I'm assuming on the audiobook, are we both narrating the stories? As it turned out for me, Penguin does not like having the authors be the narrators of the audiobooks. So instead they sent me some audio samples from different voice actors. And it was great. They were both Latino. I ended up choosing this Chicano guy who, as it turns out, was queer as well. And I have not yet listened to it because I'm a little bit scared.
He was amazing. He was amazing.
And this has been very encouraging. I haven't listened to it because I'm a little bit scared because the book is, when I write, I literally kind of talk to myself because I need to hear my voice intoning the language to see if it works or not. And so the book only has lived in my voice ever until now. So I'm a little bit daunted by it, but yeah, I'll eventually be giving that a listen soon.
Now, my publisher also outsourced my audiobook to Penguin, so same deal. They also sent me some clips and let me choose somebody. And it's taking this long to come out because I used so many non-English words in the book. And because I'm so used to it, food names, supernatural creature names, just ordinary everyday concepts. The Asian American community is very, very kind of multicultural in that way. And I'm so used to using these non-English words from like 10 different languages throughout my day that it never occurred to me to provide a pronunciation guide, and that was a mistake. So we had to go back and re-record it, and I had to provide a pronunciation guide. So, but the reader, except for the pronunciation snafu, was actually amazing. She's done an amazing job. So I'm really looking forward to it.
And so with that, warmest thanks to all of you, to Asian Art Museum, and especially to Jaime and Claire.
Jaime and Claire.
Thank you for the book.
Thank you, Joelle.
Buy the book in the bookstore and get these guys to sign it. Thank you.
So they're going to sign books. So you can run downstairs, buy your copy if you didn't bring it, and have them sign it to you. Great gifts. Thank